Episode 1. The First Night. I should have kept driving. The rain was light, the highway was clear, and yet something inside me insisted on pulling over when the neon sign flickered. Vacancy. A rundown roadside motel. The kind you forget exists until you're desperate enough to stop. The man at the front desk barely looked up as I paid. His eyes stayed glued to a black and white TV that hissed static more than it showed images. He slid me a key, an actual metal key, not a card, and muttered, "Room 6. Don't stare at the mirror too long." I laughed nervously, assuming it was a joke I didn't get. By the time I pushed open the creaky door to room 6, the smell hit me first. Mildew, smoke, and something faintly metallic like rust or old blood. The room was standard misery: a sagging bed, curtains that never fully closed, a carpet stained with shapes I didn't want to recognize. But the mirror above the dresser caught my eye. It was far too large for such a small room, stretching from wall to wall, framed in tarnished brass that had once been golden. That mirror, it didn't just reflect, it seemed to wait. I set my bag down, trying to ignore the unease crawling up my spine. But as I leaned closer, I noticed something wrong. The surface wasn't still. Not quite. It looked like breath. Subtle waves moving across the glass, as though someone on the other side was exhaling slowly against it. I stepped back, heart pounding. No, it had to be the humidity. The poor lighting. My exhaustion. I sat on the edge of the bed, forcing myself to laugh it off. Then I heard it. A soft inhale, then an exhale. Not mine. The sound came from the mirror, low and steady, like a sleeper beside me. I froze. My reflection was there, pale and wide-eyed, but behind me, just faint enough to doubt, was a shadow. Tall, slender, still. I spun around. Nothing. Only the empty room and the flicker of the television through the thin walls. I didn't sleep that night. Every time my eyes grew heavy, the sound of that breathing dragged me back to alertness. The rain outside tapped against the window like a warning, but I was too afraid to leave, too afraid to move. By dawn, I swore the mirror was warmer, like something alive had pressed its face to the other side all night long. When I finally worked up the courage to check out, the man at the desk looked at me with those tired, knowing eyes. He didn't ask how I slept. He didn't have to. He just said, "If you saw it once, it'll see you again." And that's when I realized I hadn't checked out of room 6. Room 6 had checked into me. Episode 2. The scratches on the glass. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I told myself room 6 was just a pit stop, a place I would forget once the highway swallowed me again. But by the second night, I was there, back in that same bed, staring at the same mirror I swore I would never look into again. The strange part? I hadn't chosen it. When I asked for another room, the old man at the desk smiled thinly and said, "That's the only one available." Out of a row of empty doors, he gave me the same key. Number 6. The smell was stronger this time. Rust, wet wood, and something sour. The mirror dominated the room, its surface dark like a pond at midnight. I tried not to stare, but the pull was stronger than shame. That's when I saw them. Scratches, dozens of them, etched into the glass. Thin, frantic lines clustered near the bottom edge, like someone on the other side had dragged their nails against it in desperation. My throat tightened as I leaned closer. Some scratches overlapped, but one word was unmistakable. A single name. My name. It was impossible. My chest tightened as though the room had collapsed inward. I wiped at the surface, half hoping it was just dust or some trick of light, but the grooves were deep, permanent, carved into the mirror itself. The air thickened. That's when I heard it, scraping, like fingernails dragging against glass. Not from the outside, not from me, but from inside. I stumbled back, but my reflection didn't. It lingered, frozen, while I moved. Then, slowly, it smiled. My stomach lurched. The scratches pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw fresh ones being etched, lines growing by themselves, spelling out letters I wasn't ready to read. The lights flickered. The breathing from last night returned, louder, closer, as if pressed against my ear instead of the mirror. Panic surged. I grabbed the chair from the corner and hurled it. The wood cracked against the glass with a deafening crash. Yet the mirror didn't shatter. Instead, it trembled, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. And then silence. I stood there, shaking, waiting for something to crawl through. But nothing came. The mirror stilled, my reflection settling back into place. Except for one thing. On the surface, beneath the old scratches, new letters had appeared. Uneven, jagged, unmistakably fresh. Welcome back. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the floor, staring, waiting for the mirror to blink first. But it never did. The strangest part? At dawn, when the sunlight finally cut through the curtains, my name was gone. Only those two words remained, glimmering faintly like a cruel promise. Episode 3. The Room That Shouldn't Exist. By the third night, I wasn't sure if I had checked into the motel, or if the motel had checked into me. Every bone in my body screamed to leave, but the road outside seemed endless, like it bent back on itself, leading me only here. And somehow, I ended up again with the same key, the same door, the same mirror waiting for me like a hunter with infinite patience. I promised myself I wouldn't look, but mirrors don't need permission. That night, the surface was darker than ever, swallowing the light of the cheap bedside lamp. My reflection was pale, nervous, but it wasn't what caught me. It was the space behind me. For the first time, the mirror showed more than the room. A corner, a chair, a wall painted in peeling green I'd never seen before. I turned around quickly. Nothing. The room behind me was bare, the wallpaper yellow and rotting, no green paint anywhere. But in the mirror, that other place remained, a place that shouldn't exist. The air grew heavy, pressing on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I leaned closer, so close that my breath fogged the surface. That's when I noticed it. The mirror wasn't fogging from my side. Condensation spread across the glass, dripping downward, as if the other room was humid, alive. Then something shifted. The chair in the reflection scraped back, though no sound reached me. I swear I saw the edge of a shadow moving past the frame, just enough to tell me I wasn't alone in that other place. I stumbled back, tripping over the bed, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. The mirror pulsed faintly, like a membrane stretched thin. My mind screamed, "Don't touch it," but my hand moved anyway. When my fingertips brushed the surface, it rippled under my skin. Not like glass, like water, cold, thick, unnatural. I jerked my hand back, heart racing, but moisture clung to my fingers, damp and undeniable. I stared at my wet palm, my breath ragged. The mirror had given something back. And then I noticed the smell. Not mildew, not rust. Something new, mold, heavy and rotting, like the inside of an abandoned house that hadn't been touched for decades. I couldn't stay. I shoved my things into the bag, ready to flee. But when I grabbed the doorknob, it refused to turn. Stuck, frozen solid, though no lock clicked. In the silence, a sound leaked through the glass. A faint knock. 1, then 2, then 3. I looked back. In the mirror, the other room was empty. Only that chair remained, but the knocking didn't stop. It was coming from the inside. Episode 4. The Guest Book of the Forgotten. I didn't plan to touch the mirror again. After the knocking, after the damp smell that didn't belong in this world, I swore I would never go near it. But promises don't matter when the mirror wants something from you. That night I heard a thud, soft, like a book falling to the floor. My heart jumped because I hadn't brought any books. The sound came from the dresser, right below the mirror. Something was there. A small, leather-bound notebook. Its cover was cracked, the edges swollen as if it had been left in the rain for years. When I picked it up, the pages clung together, damp and yellowed. A guest book. I flipped it open. The handwriting inside was messy, frantic. Names filled every page, stretching back decades. Some I recognized faintly from news reports, faces of people who had disappeared near this town, their stories lost to whispers and old newspapers. Others were strangers, just names without history. But one thing they had in common, each name was scratched out with deep, jagged lines, as though the paper itself had been clawed in fury. All but one, my name, written clearly in a shaky but deliberate hand, no crossout, still waiting. My stomach turned. I flipped through page after page, desperate to find an explanation. Sometimes there were notes beside the names, phrases scrawled hastily. Taken behind, didn't return, still knocking. The room grew colder as I read. I swore I heard faint whispers threading through the walls, like dozens of voices murmuring at once. The last page stopped me cold. There, pressed into the paper so hard the letters nearly tore through, was a warning. Do not answer if it calls your name. My pulse roared in my ears. The silence stretched, unbearable. I closed the book quickly, shoving it under the bed like that could erase it. But as soon as I did, the mirror quivered. In its reflection, the notebook hadn't moved. It sat there on the dresser, open, pages fluttering through the air, and the room was still. I watched in terror as a fresh line of writing etched itself into the paper, the pen invisible, the words appearing letter by letter. "Welcome, my name. Your room is ready." The mirror pulsed once more, as if breathing in satisfaction. And then, from the other side, I heard my own voice whisper back to me. Calm, patient, impossible. "Come in." Episode 5. The Woman in the Chair. I didn't want to open my eyes. But sometime past midnight, I felt it. The weight of someone watching me. The room was silent except for the hum of the dying light bulb. But I knew, even before I looked, that the mirror would not be empty. And I was right. She was there. In the reflection, behind my slouched body on the bed, sat a woman in a wooden chair I had never seen in the real room. Her hair fell in long, wet strands clinging to her pale cheeks. She wore a faded dress the color of drowned paper. Her hands rested on her lap, still as stone. But it was her head that terrified me, tilted ever so slightly as if she was listening. I shot upright, heart hammering. My real room was empty. No chair, no woman. Only the sagging carpet, the peeling wallpaper, the suffocating smell of mold. Yet in the mirror she stayed, patient, waiting. I told myself not to move closer, not to look. But fear and fascination are twins. My feet dragged me toward the dresser until I was face to face with her, glass separating our worlds. Her eyes lifted. Dark, hollow pits stared straight into mine. I staggered back, but my reflection didn't follow. It froze mid-step, trapped, while she leaned forward in the chair. For the first time, she moved. Her lips parted slowly, painfully, like skin cracking open. No sound came out, only the faint impression of words I couldn't hear. I pressed my palms to my ears, shaking, whispering to myself, "It's not real. It's not real." Then the lights went out. Complete blackness swallowed the room. I felt the walls breathing around me, pressing in closer, the carpet damp beneath my bare feet. And in the mirror, though I could see nothing, I felt her rise from the chair. A scrape echoed, wood dragging across unseen floorboards. Then came the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving closer to the glass. When the light flickered back to life, the chair was empty. The woman was gone. My reflection returned, pale and trembling, mirroring me once more. But the surface of the mirror was smeared, streaked as if touched by wet, dirty fingers. I leaned in despite myself. On the fogged glass, fresh words had been drawn by a fingertip. Letters crooked and trembling, but legible. "Don't blink." And before I could breathe, before I could even decide what to do, I realized my reflection wasn't looking at me anymore. It was looking over my shoulder. Episode 6. Whispers Through the Wall. By now, I no longer asked myself why I stayed. Some part of me understood. Leaving wasn't an option. The road always bent back. The key always found my hand, and room 6 always waited like a cage that pretends to be a bed. But the whispers were new. It began with a faint hum. At first, I thought it was the TV in the lobby bleeding through the thin walls, but as the night deepened, the voices sharpened, threading themselves into words. They were saying my name. At first, only once or twice. Then again, overlapping. Dozens of versions of my name layered like a chant. Some whispered it tenderly, others hissed it with venom. A choir of unseen mouths, all pressing against the paper-thin walls. I pressed my ear against the plaster, cold, damp, and on the other side I swore I could feel breath, warm and human. The mirror trembled faintly, reflecting me pale and sweating. But behind my reflection, behind the room, shadows shifted like figures waiting in silence. "Who's there?" My voice cracked as soon as I spoke. The whispers stopped. The silence was worse. I turned from the wall, but the air seemed to thicken, as though the room itself was listening. I dared not sit on the bed. I dared not close my eyes. Instead, I stayed in the chair, clutching my knees, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. And then they answered. This time, not my name. My secrets. Words I'd buried. Memories no one could possibly know. The whisper came smooth, precise, a woman's voice curling through the wall. "We know what you did at 13. We know who you buried." My stomach dropped. My skin turned ice. That memory, I hadn't even let myself think about it in years, yet the wall knew. I slammed my fists against the plaster, screaming, "Shut up! Shut up!" The mirror shook violently, rippling like a pond struck by a stone. My reflection grinned, though my real mouth did not. And in that grin, I saw teeth longer, sharper than mine. The whispers returned, but now closer, clearer, like they were pressed against my ear. "We're not behind the wall," they hissed. "We're already in." The lamp flickered once, then died. The darkness swallowed me whole, and the voices erupted. Not whispers now, but laughter, wild and guttural, echoing from every corner of the room. I pressed my palms to my ears, rocking, praying, begging. But over the noise, one voice cut through, soft, deliberate, familiar. It was my own. "You can't silence me. You let me in the moment you listened." And when I dared glance at the mirror, my reflection's lips were still moving, whispering secrets I hadn't confessed yet. Episode 7, The Motel Keeper's Lie. I couldn't face another night alone with the mirror. By dawn, my throat was raw from muttering prayers, my body trembling from hours of whispers gnawing at the edges of my sanity. When the sun finally rose, I bolted from room 6 and marched straight to the front desk. The motel keeper was there, as always, hunched over his static-filled television. He didn't look surprised to see me. He never did. "You knew," I hissed, slamming the room key onto the counter. "You knew what was in there." His eyes flicked up, dull, gray, like stones at the bottom of a river. He sighed, long and weary, before answering. "There's nothing in that room that wasn't already inside you." The words crawled under my skin. "Don't lie to me." I saw her. I heard them. The whispers, the scratching, the chair. For a moment his expression cracked, a flicker of recognition, fear even, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You're tired," he muttered, shaking his head. "Mirrors play tricks." I grabbed him by the collar, pulling him closer. "Then explain this." I shoved my hand into his line of sight. The dampness from the mirror still stained my skin, faint and sour. "Explain how glass can bleed water." His lips tightened. He looked around, as though the very walls might be listening. Then, leaning close enough that his breath touched my cheek, he whispered, "You shouldn't have touched it." The floor beneath me seemed to tilt. "So you admit it," I said, but his eyes darted past me, toward the hallway leading back to room 6. His face paled. "You should leave," he muttered. "Now, before it decides you're staying." "Before what decides?" I demanded. He said nothing. His gaze dropped to the television, its screen filled with static. Except this time, I saw something move in the noise. Shapes. A woman in a chair, my reflection smiling back at me through the snow of broken channels. The motel keeper snapped the set off, his hand trembling. "No more questions. Not if you want to walk out whole." But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. As I turned, I caught a glimpse of a ledger half hidden beneath the counter. Old, leather-bound. The same as the guest book I'd found in the room. Dozens of names filled its pages, all crossed out. My name was there too. But unlike the others, mine wasn't scratched through, just circled, waiting. When I looked back at the keeper, he avoided my stare, his lips pressed tight, and for the first time I realized the truth. He hadn't given me room 6 by mistake. He'd given it to me because the mirror wanted me there. Episode 8, The Broken Reflection. I told myself I wouldn't step back into room 6. I swore I'd leave the key on the counter and vanish down the highway, never looking back. But that night, when the sun bled out over the horizon, I found myself turning the knob once more. The door opened easily, as though it had been waiting for me. The mirror dominated the room as always, but this time my reflection wasn't right. At first, it looked normal, tired, pale, broken from nights without sleep. But when I shifted, it lagged, just a fraction of a second too slow. And when I blinked, it didn't. I tried to laugh, to shake it off. Maybe exhaustion was twisting my mind. But then the reflection smiled. I didn't. My chest clenched. The grin was sharp, unnatural, stretching wider than any human mouth should. It stared at me with my own eyes. But they glistened with something wet, something hungry. "No," I whispered, "you're not me." The reflection tilted its head, mocking me. Then it raised its hand. I hadn't moved. Still, it pressed its palm against the glass. A thin crack formed where its fingers touched, running jaggedly across the surface. The sound was sharp, brittle, like ice breaking. Panic surged. I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and hurled it with all my strength. The bulb shattered, sparks flying, but the mirror didn't break. Instead, it rippled, waves spreading outward as though I'd struck water. And then the reflection stepped closer. It pressed its face against the glass. I could see every detail, the stretched grin, the trembling skin, the pupils dilating until they drowned the whites of its eyes. My stomach lurched. Then it mouthed the words slow and deliberate. "Let me out." The crack spread wider, veins of black crawling across the surface. A noise rose with it, a low, guttural hum that wasn't coming from the mirror, but from inside my own chest. My ribs ached as though something inside me wanted out. I stumbled back toward the door, fumbling with the knob. Locked. Again. The mirror pulsed once, twice, and my reflection, my other self, lifted its hand in a gesture I recognized instantly. A wave. The same wave I'd seen once before, in a nightmare I thought I'd imagined. I turned away, refusing to look, heart slamming against my ribs. But the sound of cracking glass followed me, sharp and steady, like footsteps. When I dared to glance back, the reflection wasn't standing anymore. It was crawling, closer to the crack, closer to me, and its grin never faltered. Episode 9. The room behind the mirror opens. The crack spread like lightning across the glass, black veins splitting my reflection into fragments. Each shard of me wore the same grotesque grin, their mouths whispering words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. "Come closer." I pressed myself against the door, twisting the knob until my palms burned. Locked. Of course. The mirror had made its choice. The surface trembled, no longer just reflecting but beckoning, rippling like a thin skin of water stretched over a doorway. And then, without warning, the glass gave way. It didn't shatter. It opened. The crack split wide, folding back like peeling paint, and what lay beyond was no longer my reflection. It was a room that should not exist. Dim light flickered from a single bare bulb swinging overhead. The air inside was damp, thick, smelling of rot and stagnant water. The walls were coated in peeling green paint, streaked with dark stains that trickled downward like veins. In the corner sat the wooden chair, empty now, waiting. My body trembled, but my legs betrayed me. Step by step, I was pulled toward the breach as though some invisible tide had caught me. My hand brushed the surface, cold, wet, alive, and then I was through. The floor squelched beneath my shoes. It was soaked, though no water pooled. The sound echoed unnaturally, too loud for such a small space. My breath plumed in the heavy air. Behind me, I expected to see the motel room, the sagging bed, the stained carpet, the broken lamp. But when I turned, there was nothing. Only more green walls, stretching endlessly in both directions. The mirror was gone. I wasn't looking into the room anymore. I was inside it. The whispers returned immediately, not through walls this time. From the air itself surrounding me, circling. Names hissed, dozens, hundreds. Some I remembered from the guest book, others foreign and lost. All of them overlapping, weaving into a chorus of despair. I stumbled forward, clutching my ears. My hand brushed something on the wall, a frame, a picture coated in grime. I wiped at it and froze. It was me. Not me as I was now, but me sitting in that chair, head tilted, eyes dark and hollow. My stomach churned. Behind me, wood scraped. The chair. Slowly, impossibly, it dragged itself across the floor. Positioning in the center of the room, the whispers grew louder, eager, as if they were urging me to sit. And then I heard her, the woman, her voice curling through the damp air, low and patient. "Every guest must take their turn." The bulb overhead flickered violently, shadows twitching along the walls. My knees buckled, drawn toward the chair like a puppet on strings. And for the first time I understood. This wasn't a reflection at all. It was a waiting room. Episode 10. The rules of the room. The chair waited for me in the center of the room, silent and steady, as if it had always known I would arrive. The whispers swirled, overlapping in a chaotic hymn, pushing me toward it. My body trembled, but the weight in the air left little room for choice. Then I saw the writing. On the wall, scrawled in jagged black strokes, words repeated over and over, stacked on top of each other like desperate warnings. At first, I couldn't read them. The letters slid in and out of focus, blurring as if they were alive. But when the bulb overhead flickered, the words sharpened. "Do not speak. Do not turn your back. Do not look at the chair. My breath caught. Rules, carved not for comfort but survival. I staggered backward, forcing myself not to glance at the chair again. But it was impossible to ignore. The air seemed to bend around it, heavy and magnetic, dragging my gaze like a predator demanding attention. Why me? I whispered before realizing the first rule. My voice cracked against the silence, and instantly the whispers shifted. They weren't random anymore. They were mocking, laughing. The walls groaned. Something scuttled in the corners, unseen. My chest seized as I realized I'd already broken the first command. I spun to find a way out, but the second rule screamed in my skull. Do not turn your back. Too late. The air behind me thickened, warm and wet, like a mouth exhaling against my neck. A shadow crawled over the wall in front of me, long fingers stretching toward my shoulders. I froze, every nerve screaming. If I moved, if I looked, what would happen? The whispers hushed, falling silent as if holding their breath. Only the bulb above buzzed, swaying slowly, casting the shadow's arms longer, closer, until they reached the edges of my feet. I forced myself to edge sideways, never turning fully, until I could see the far corner of the room. That's when I noticed something else scrawled into the wall, smaller, nearly hidden. A fourth line. If you sit, you stay. My stomach dropped. I turned my eyes, just my eyes, toward the chair. It was no longer empty. The woman sat there, head bowed, her hair slick and dripping onto the floor. Slowly she lifted her face. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Her lips stretched wider, cracking until black fluid seeped down her chin. I couldn't look away. I had broken every rule now. The bulb burst with a sharp pop, and in the darkness I heard the scrape of wood sliding closer. The chair was no longer in the center. It was right in front of me. Episode 11. The mirror demands payment. The chair pressed against my knees. In the dark, I could feel its wood, slick and damp, like it had been soaking in water for years. The whispers had gone silent, but the silence was worse. It was heavy, deliberate, like everything inside that room was holding its breath for my next move. I backed away, stumbling into the wall. My fingers brushed damp plaster, and that's when the rules came back to me, etched in jagged black on the walls. Do not speak, do not turn your back, do not look at the chair. I had broken them all, and now the room wanted something in return. The whispers returned slowly, no longer mocking. They were bargaining. One voice spoke above the rest, deep and patient. The mirror gives, the mirror takes. You've touched it, you owe. Oh, what? I whispered before I could stop myself. My words felt like coins dropped into an endless well. A memory, a life, a piece of you. I clutched my head, shaking. No, you can't take anything from me. But the mirror disagreed. Behind me, the glass hummed. I turned just enough to see it, the reflection, fractured but alive, pulsing like a wound. My other self stood inside, grinning wider than ever. It lifted a hand and pressed 2 fingers against its temple. Pain seared through my skull. Memories burst like glass shattering, faces, places, moments. My childhood dog's bark, my mother's laugh, the taste of winter air, all gone in an instant, replaced with emptiness. I screamed, clawing at my head, but the reflection only laughed, soundless but merciless. When the pain eased, the voice returned. 1 payment collected. More will be required. I staggered to my feet, gasping, and caught sight of the guest book lying open on the floor. My name glowed faintly on the page. Next to it, words appeared in jagged script, written by an unseen hand. First memory taken. More to follow. No, I whispered. No more. The mirror pulsed again. My reflection raised its arm, and I felt my right shoulder jerk violently, as if strings had been tied to it. I lost control, my own body no longer mine. Stop! I shouted, tears burning my eyes. What do you want from me? The reflection tilted its head, and in my own voice it mouthed a single word. Everything. The chair scraped forward again, waiting. And I realized this wasn't just about memories or scars. The mirror wasn't satisfied with fragments. It wanted to take me apart piece by piece, until I was the one sitting forever in that chair. Episode 12. The Motel Keeper's Confession. I stumbled out of room 6 at dawn, my head hollow, my chest aching like something vital had been stolen from inside me. My legs carried me to the front desk, though I barely remembered how I got there. The motel keeper was waiting. Not behind the counter, not watching his static-filled television, but standing in the middle of the lobby, hands folded like a priest waiting for confession. His eyes met mine, and for the first time he didn't look away. "You survived another night," he said softly. "Most don't." I slammed my fists against the counter. What the hell is happening in there? The mirror, it's taking pieces of me. My memories, my body. Why me? He closed his eyes, sighing like a man who had carried this weight far too long. "Because it chose you. The mirror always chooses." "That's not an answer," I snapped. His face tightened and he gestured for me to sit. Against every instinct I did. His voice was low but steady, each word measured. "That mirror was not always here. Once, long ago, it hung in a house that swallowed everyone who lived in it. When the house burned down, the mirror remained, untouched, unharmed. It was brought here by fools who thought it was just a piece of glass. But the mirror doesn't just reflect. It remembers. It keeps." I felt my stomach turn. "Keeps what?" "Souls," he whispered. His eyes glistened with something between fear and guilt. "It doesn't kill. Not in the way you think. It trades. A memory, a scar, a name, a life. Piece by piece, it empties you until nothing is left but a shell. And then it replaces you with what you saw. The reflection." The room spun around me. "You knew? You gave me that room on purpose." He didn't deny it. His lips trembled. "I was once inside. 2 years ago. It took my wife, my son. I thought I had escaped. But I hadn't. The mirror let me go because I promised it something in return." His eyes dropped to the ledger on the counter, the guest book. The names carved, scratched out, waiting. "I bring it new guests," he whispered, his voice breaking. "That's the only reason I'm still here. I keep the mirror fed." My blood ran cold. Rage boiled up, but I couldn't find words. My name circled in that book burned behind my eyes. He leaned closer, his face pale, haunted. "You need to understand. It won't stop until it owns you. You can run, but the mirror is patient. It will always find its way back. And when it does, you'll beg to return here, because at least this place has rules." His voice fell to a trembling hush. "I lied when I said you could leave. No one leaves. Not really." The static on the lobby television roared to life behind him, and in its snowy haze, I saw myself, smiling from inside the screen. Episode 13. The Mirror Cracks. The motel keeper's confession clung to me like smoke. His words poisoned the air in my lungs. "I bring it new guests. That's why I'm still here." I wanted to kill him, to tear the ledger apart, to burn this place to the ground. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. The mirror wasn't bound to wood or stone, it was bound to me. That night, I returned to room 6, not by choice, but because the door swung open before I touched it, the air inside pulling at me like a tide. The mirror loomed larger than ever, stretching wall to wall, humming with a low vibration that crawled into my bones. I whispered to myself, "This ends tonight." I grabbed the rusted lamp, hefting it like a weapon. The reflection stared back at me, its grin wider, sharper. Behind it, the woman sat in the chair, her head tilted, watching as if this was entertainment. "Not tonight," I spat, and I swung. The lamp smashed against the surface, sparks flew, metal bent, but the glass didn't break. It rippled, mocking me. The reflection laughed without sound, its mouth a black cavern. I screamed and struck again, and again. Each blow shook the room, the walls bleeding dust, the ceiling groaning like a living thing. Finally, on the 7th strike, a sound split the air. Crack! A jagged fracture cut across the mirror, thin but spreading, like lightning frozen in glass. My reflection's grin faltered. Its eyes darted, panicked, as though it hadn't expected resistance. Hope surged in me, raw and desperate. "You bleed too," I snarled. But the crack didn't stop. It widened, branching into more, splitting the reflection into dozens of fractured versions of myself, all twitching, all writhing. Some screamed, some clawed at the glass. One pressed its face against the fissure, eyes wild. The woman in the chair stood up. The whispers roared. No longer background noise, but a storm tearing through my skull. Words overlapped, deafening. A chorus of commands: sit, stay, belong, break. The fracture spread wider until the glass began to peel apart like splitting skin. A hand burst through. My hand, but wrong. The fingers were too long. The nails blackened, dripping with a thick tar-like liquid that hissed as it touched the carpet. I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. The hand clawed for me, nails slicing the air. More cracks formed, more hands pressed through. The mirror wasn't breaking, it was opening. The motel keeper's words echoed in my head. At least here, there are rules. But I understood now. Rules meant nothing once the mirror decided to come through. The reflection's mouth stretched one final time, wider than the crack itself, and from every shard, every fragment of glass, I heard my own voice screaming, and then the mirror burst open. Episode 14, The Room's Last Guest. When the mirror burst, the room didn't just shatter, it multiplied. Every fragment of glass that hit the carpet opened like a doorway, each one spilling shadows, screams, and faces I almost recognized. The air turned heavy with damp rot. The wallpaper peeled away in strips, revealing not plaster but endless green walls beneath, stretching out in every direction. The motel room was gone. I stood in a labyrinth of identical rooms, each lit by a single swaying bulb, each echoing with whispers. And then I saw them. The missing. Dozens of people stood in the halls, their skin waxy, their movements jerky. Their eyes were black hollows, their mouths trembling but soundless. The guest book's names had faces now. They turned their heads toward me in perfect unison, their necks cracking with the motion. I froze. My body screamed to run, but my feet rooted in place. One of them stepped forward. His lips moved, dry and brittle. When the voice came, it was not his, but hundreds speaking through him. The mirror keeps, the mirror feeds. Now you are one of us. I stumbled back, but there was nowhere to go. The walls pulsed, bending closer, pressing me toward the crowd. Their bodies twitched as they advanced, every step echoing like bones splintering. "No!" I shouted. My voice cracked. Desperate. "I won't sit in that chair. I won't stay here." But even as I said it, the whispers surged louder, mocking me. My reflection appeared again, not in glass this time, but standing among the crowd, grinning, waving, its eyes gleaming with hunger. It whispered in my own voice, "You already did." And then the chair scraped forward from the center of the hall. Its wooden legs dragged against the floor, leaving black scorch marks in their wake. The woman stood behind it, her dripping hair plastered to her face. Her hands gripped the chair's back, urging me closer without a word. The crowd parted, clearing a path. Dozens of hollow eyes pinned me in place. The whispers grew rhythmic now, almost like a chant. "Sit, sit, sit." My knees trembled. The closer I got, the heavier the air became, as if gravity itself demanded obedience. I tried to resist, to plant my feet, but the force pressed me down. I collapsed into the chair. The wood groaned beneath me, but it didn't break. It held me firmly, too firmly, as though it had been carved for me alone. Cold seeped into my skin. My reflection stepped out from the crowd and stood directly in front of me. It leaned forward until its lips were against my ear. "The room only needs one guest at a time, and now it has you." The crowd nodded in eerie silence. Their hollow eyes finally looked away, their mouths closed. And in the crushing quiet, I realized the truth. They hadn't been waiting for rescue. They had been waiting for replacement. Episode 15, The Final Reflection, Epilogue. The chair held me like chains. No matter how I twisted, how I clawed at the arms, it wouldn't let me go. My body was mine, but my will no longer was. The whispers fell silent at last, replaced by something far worse, anticipation. The woman leaned over me, her dripping hair brushing my face. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The mirror pulsed behind her like a beating heart, light spilling through its cracks. And then my reflection stepped forward. It was no longer fractured, no longer broken, whole, strong, smiling with a calmness that made my skin crawl. It bent down until we were face to face, and for the first time I saw what it really was. Not a copy, not a shadow. It was the version of me the mirror wanted, the version that belonged here. It touched my chest with one long finger. The cold burned deep, and I felt something pull loose inside me. A shiver, a tearing, like roots being ripped from soil. My breath faltered, my vision blurred. The crowd of the forgotten watched silently. Their hollow eyes didn't blink. They were no longer waiting for me. They were waiting for it. My reflection leaned close to my ear. "You've paid enough. Now you stay." The room dissolved around me. The walls bled into shadow, the green paint peeling into nothing. The mirror swallowed everything. The chair, the woman, the crowd, and me. When I opened my eyes again, I was staring at a motel room. Not the rotting one with green walls, but the ordinary room 6, the sagging bed, the stained carpet, the curtains half closed, and in the mirror above the dresser, I saw him. He looked like me, down to every scar and shadow beneath the eyes. But his smile was wrong, too calm, too human. He picked up my bag, slung it over his shoulder, and walked out the door. I screamed, but no sound came. My fists pounded against the glass, but the guest in the mirror didn't turn. He was free now, free instead of me. The mirror showed the room behind him, empty, lifeless. No chair, no woman, no whispers, only me. I pressed my face against the surface and my reflection stared back with wide, hopeless eyes. Not his anymore, mine. That's when I understood. I wasn't the guest anymore. I was the reflection. The next morning, another traveler stopped at the motel. The neon sign flickered, promising vacancy. The keeper handed over a key with his usual weary smile. "Room 6, he said softly. "Try not to stare at the mirror too long." And when the new guest opened the door, dropped his bag, and glanced at the dresser, I was there, smiling, waiting.
Extended epilogue, the vacancy never ends. They say evil is patient, but the mirror isn't patient, it's eternal. Days bled into nights, and nights into something worse. From my prison behind the glass, I watched the new guest. He was young, tired, just passing through. That's what they all think at first. I screamed at him, begged him not to stay. But of course he couldn't hear me. The mirror doesn't let warnings through. It only lets temptation. Each time he looked at me, I smiled. Not because I wanted to, but because the mirror made me. My face stretched into the same welcoming grin that once lured me closer. The cycle repeats itself, written in the cracks of the glass. And then I noticed something new. The mirror was growing. At first, I thought it was my mind breaking, but I saw it clearly, the frame expanding, swallowing more of the wall, its glass stretching wider like a spreading disease. With every guest, with every payment it collected, the mirror wasn't satisfied anymore. It wanted more rooms, more walls, more world. The motel keeper knew. I could see it in his eyes each time he handed over the key. He didn't look at me anymore. Didn't dare. His ledger was full. Every page scrawled with names. Some already crossed out. Some still glowing faintly. And now there's something worse. At night, when the guests sleep, I see beyond the glass. Not just room 6. Other places. Other mirrors. In bathrooms. In bedrooms. In shops along forgotten highways. Each one flickers with the same hum. The same hunger. The mirror was never trapped in this motel. It has always been everywhere. I press my palms against the glass. But this time, it doesn't feel solid. It feels thin. Fragile. And sometimes, when the whispers grow loud, I feel something pressing back. Not me. Not the woman. Something older. Something waiting to crawl through. The last thing I want is to believe what I already know. Room 6 isn't the prison. The world outside is. And soon, the mirror won't be content with one guest at a time. It will want everyone.